satisfying than I ever imagined, so this is going to be great. Yeah. So I'm Ms. Bartlett, so I'm here to talk a little bit about an experience that I had this summer. I did a program called Polar Trek, which stands for Teachers and Researchers Exploring and Collaborating. And it's exactly what it sounds like. So its teachers are paired with polar researchers, so the Arctic or the Antarctic, and we basically go out and do research with them in the field, which is really great. So we get to learn about the scientific process, we get to learn about all these research methods. And the researchers get to basically get their research and what they love and what they're passionate about out to the public and students like you. So it's this really great collaborative effort that gives us all a little bit of perspective on each other. You guys all have science textbooks. Where does all that science come from, right? It's coming from these researchers, and they really want to let students know how it's done and what happens out in the field. Some of you met Dr. Cooper, who was here last year and spoke to a few of you. And so he was my PI, my researcher that I worked with. He's from the University of Maryland. I was there with him and his wife, Dr. Jackie Redmeyer. Yeah, we're in and out. It's going to be great. I can also use that microphone too, I guess. So like I mentioned, there were 12 teachers in this program. So the expedition started in May of 2019, and then they're going to go until February of 2020. So we basically go out at different times. Half of us go to Antarctica, half of us go to the Arctic. And to put a little perspective on how much this basically costs to send teachers to do this, it's about 15 grand for an Arctic expedition. So National Science Foundation paid $15,000 for me to go on this trip, which was great for me because I didn't pay for it. And to go to Antarctica, it's about 20 grand. So it's this really great experience. Only 12 of us in the country that get to go. And it's really transformative, and it's this amazing experience. And I have to thank my colleagues, all of you, for really letting me do this. And you're really lucky to go to a school that allows teachers to do this kind of stuff, because I talked to a lot of these other teachers, and they were having trouble with their school and their administration letting them do this. So the fact that you guys go to St. Thomas is fantastic just for that reason alone. So at the end of July, I started this expedition at the end of July. I flew from Boston, it's going to give you a little bit of perspective, and I flew all the way to Nome, Alaska, which is on the Seward Peninsula, way up here. And I was on a U.S. Coast Guard cutter Healy, which is a 420-foot Coast Guard research vessel, and that was our port of call, was Nome. So I had to go out there to basically get on the ship. And then for 4 weeks, I just kind of sailed around the Bering and the Chukchi Sea collecting data with all of these different researchers. So I worked with one specific researcher, but there were 40 researchers on this boat doing all kinds of different stuff, from harmful algal blooms to marine mammals to fish, larvae, and plankton and stuff like that. So it was this really wide range of researchers on this boat, as well as Coast Guard folks. A little bit of life on the Healy. So this is the ship here. That was my little floating house for a couple of weeks. There's some things on the ship that you wouldn't normally think about. There's a store, there's a barber shop, you get fed 4 meals a day, which is great. There has to be a gym, so there's a gym. And we were 3 people to a room, so you're in a dorm kind of style room. The sun never sets, so these lovely little shades here are extremely important. We had to take a small boat to actually get on the ship. The port of Nome is too shallow for the ship to actually dock there, so we had to take this little boat out and go do that. We also, again, mingled with a lot of the Coast Guard folks, the research folks, and this is just a lovely picture of the bow of the ship from the bridge, which is where they actually steer the boat. And so it was just this really great experience to be on this boat with all of these people, about 120 folks crammed on there for 4 weeks. So it's just a really long cruise, kind of, with a lot of work in between. We had morale nights, so things like trivia or sumo wrestling, which I'll show you here. I'm actually in the red, so this was like 3 weeks in. There was a $50 Amazon gift card on the line. It was important. Yeah, so you can't really see that. See, it's me, thank goodness. But yeah, so what you don't see is that all 120 people are in this airplane hangar watching this, so it was really fun. So just tournament style. So they do these morale nights, trivia nights, this kind of stuff, and just a lot of fun with these folks. The Coast Guard was an integral part of this research. So this ship is actually made for science research, so it has a lot of large equipment on it, it's got a lab, and we got to see a lot of cool Coast Guard operations. So if you're a Coast Guard person and you get assigned to this ship, you know that you're going to be doing all this cool research. And so there's a helicopter on the boat, so we got to like play around with a helicopter for a couple of days. They had small boat operations, so anytime anything was like out in the water, dead birds, whatever, we'd go pick them up in the small boat. We broke our engine at one point, and the only way to get it, a new part for that, was a cargo plane had to fly over and drop it in the water, and then we had to go retrieve it, and we fixed our boat that way. So just some of these really neat things about the Coast Guard that I never would have thought that I would have experienced, and we really got to work closely with them. Which is a really great thing. And they also collaborated with all of our researchers as well, and they're really passionate about what they do and willing to kind of help the research along as well. So my specific team, that research team that I worked with, was the benthic team. Benthic means bottom, so basically we were looking at the biomass and biodiversity of organisms on the bottom. And so this was our team. This is actually Jackie Grebmeyer here. That's Lee Cooper, who was here earlier last year. That's his wife. She did her PhD in the Arctic. In the mud in the 80s, so she's been doing this for a long time and she's a wealth of knowledge. And so basically, how do we get that stuff off the bottom? So we use two different things. We use what's called a Van Veen grab. It's basically just a giant heavy claw that's 117 pounds when it's empty. And it goes down, grabs mud, and comes back up. We also have what's called a HAPS core, and it's basically just a giant metal cylinder that basically takes a little puncture hole in the mud and then comes back up. And then once we get that up there, we put it into a big bucket, and then we put it into this sieve. I also have to apologize in advance. There's a lot of red in this PowerPoint, so every time we're out there collecting research, we're all in these red Mustang suits that are super attractive. And so they were just safety things for the deck, so we had to have those on pretty often. And so we basically put the mud in these sieves, and then we hose off all the mud, collect the organisms that are in the bottom of this sieve, and package it, and it goes back to the lab for analysis. So that's kind of what my daily life was like. I was a part of the research team. I had a shift and everything. It was 24 hours a day. Somebody was always up collecting data, doing this kind of stuff. So they really made me feel like I was a part of the group. This is a kind of an example of what you might see in one of these sieves. So there's a lot of invertebrates, worms, clams, and amphipods up here. Okay? So there's a lot of different stuff, and it was just kind of cool to sift through all of this and check it out. So why do we care what's on the bottom? Why do we care about this? And the reason really is that these organisms on the bottom are food for a lot of other species. So for example, walrus, which we all love walrus because they're so cute, they love to eat clams off the bottom. And so they want to know how many clams are there, what kind of clams are there, are the walruses going to be there? So if there are clams, there are going to be walruses. Okay? Same thing with these amphipods. Everybody loves whales. Gray whales are one of the species that migrate up there, and they like to go down and eat these little amphipods by the thousands. So we really want to know what's on the bottom because it gives us an idea of the health of the ecosystem. And what's happening is that climate change is actually causing a reduction in the biomass and the amount of these organisms, which means that there's less food for things like walruses or seabirds or whales that are using this food. So that's what these researchers are really looking at. And a lot of the researchers on the ship are looking at things like ocean acidification. How is the ecosystem really being affected by climate change? And it is being affected. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. This is a video of Van Veen grab. I have this in here. This is our little Van Veen grab here. Really, really heavy. It takes a couple of guys to bring it over the side. But it's just kind of a cool thing. And there's our lovely bucket that we put all our mud in. And there's Lee. So if you were here last year and you saw him, there's Lee. Like I mentioned, there are a lot of other researchers on this ship, okay? 40 other researchers. Everybody always asks me, what kind of animals did you see? So I threw this slide in here because everybody wants to know about the animals. We did see a lot of mammals, so gray whales, orcas, a fur seal. Here's my little walrus. We were on this really large boat, so he looks really small. And we saw a lot of different birds. So there was a bird researcher on here as well. Puffins, least auklets, lots of wildlife. And you could go up to the bridge where they steer the boat and check it out, so it was pretty cool. And I had this epiphany about halfway through this trip, because I was like, oh yeah, polar trip. Like I'm gonna do this awesome science, and I'm gonna get in my Mustang suit and collect all this great data. It's gonna be fabulous, and I'm gonna love it. Science, yay. I love science, so I was like super pumped to do this. And what happened was halfway through, I kind of realized it's not even all about the science, it's really about the people. And I kind of had this like epiphany, like, oh yeah, like this research is actually about people. And all these really cool people that I met, it wasn't even about the science all the time, it was really about the people and who I got to meet and who I got to interact with. Most of the researchers on the ship were women, so there's a lot of women here in science. And I have to mention Charlie Wright, who was the bird surveyor. He works for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and he doesn't have a college degree. Doesn't have a college degree. He's just out there collecting bird data because he loves it. And he's so good at it. He can tell you from a mile away what a bird is. He can tell you what a bird is by its call. Doesn't have a college degree. His first job out of high school also was 3 doors down from where I grew up. So weirdly enough, that was our connection. Yeah, it was really weird. Chris, over here in the corner, hey, he just graduated from the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. He's from Keene, New Hampshire. So we were all about the Shire when we were on this ship because we were like the only 2 New Hampshire people. Yes. And then just like a few other really great, fun people to be around. And it was really all about these people, which was really, really great. And we realized we had the same goal all in mind, okay? We were doing all this climate change research, but for what? For what? What are we doing this climate change research? And I realized, my second epiphany, because I had 2, it was a big year, I realized it's about helping people. Research is about helping people, okay? And who are we helping with this research? And I immediately thought, I know exactly who I'm helping with this research. It's these kids. So before I got on the ship, I spent about a week in Nome, which is a really small community, and I'm going to kind of turn away from science now for those people who aren't science people and talk a little bit about this community and the people. Because again, science, research, is about people. It's about helping people through science and research. And these kids, middle school, high school kids, this was a summer camp, okay? Ecology Explorers for the university. They're young, and these are the little flags they made for me, and then I took them on the ship and posted pictures of them so they could follow the expedition, and they were so cute. But this was a great little group of kids, okay? A lot of them are Alaska Natives. And Alaska Natives are very different than the Native Americans that we have down here in the lower 48. They still use the land. They're not on reservations. They need the land, they need the environment in order to survive. And these kids, I went to teach them about marine science, but they taught me more than I could have ever taught them. They taught me all about what they're seeing in their climate, what are they seeing in their environment. And really the truth is that they're seeing a change in their family dynamics. They're seeing a change in the way they do things in their traditions. They're seeing these big changes. Sea ice decline, okay? Nome is right on the water, and in the wintertime, they need that sea ice to go out and hunt, to fish, to get crabs, whatever they need to do to feed their family. And this ice is disappearing very, very quickly. It comes later, okay, and it leaves sooner. It's thinner, okay? They're having a lot of deaths because people are going out when they shouldn't be, and they're seeing this problem. They're seeing an increase in their temperatures, an increase in their sea temperatures, and it's changing the fish that they're able to catch. Okay? The fish that they usually caught aren't there anymore. And these kids are young. These kids are your age, maybe a little bit younger, maybe as young as a sibling you have. Young kids, and they're seeing this in their lifetime. So it's really, really drastic. I don't know how many people know about Arctic amplification, but there's a reason why they're seeing climate change more than we are. We will see it. It is happening. We are going to see it. But Arctic amplification makes the Arctic see these climate change differences, or this climate change, much sooner. Most of the time, the poles are covered in white snow, which when the sun hits it, it reflects, right? But when the snow ice melts and the ice and the snow melt, all of that dark land, or the dark ice, or the dark water is absorbing all of that heat, okay, and it's heating up the poles much quicker. So they're seeing climate change much more drastically than we are. So Nome is a subsistence-based community. Again, a lot of Alaska Natives, they have to fish, they have to hunt. Alaska Natives are able to take walrus, seals, for food. Seals are gross. I did have some of the students made me eat it, and it was not my thing. But it was very cool. It's a traditional dish, right? So they rely on this land. Okay, these Alaska Natives rely on this land. Nome is about a town of 1,000 people. Okay, it's the end of the Iditarod, so the day of the Iditarod it goes up to about 30,000, but normally it's 1,000 people. And this is kind of their like main square here, little church. This is their main street, super bumping. That's like a Saturday, yeah. Not much going on here, okay? It's really isolated. There's no way to drive in or out. You have to fly in or out, or you have to ferry, okay, boat or plane. There are 2 other smaller villages, about 50 miles from here, and they only are about 100 people big. So there's some other people on this peninsula, this area, but not many. But you gotta fly in and out. This is my hotel room. This is actually the university. So the university, there's 4 buildings, pretty exciting stuff. This is 2 a.m., so you can kind of see how the sun doesn't set. This was a guy who had a polar bear skin on his truck, and I just thought that was kind of interesting, so I took a photo. And this is how close that main street is. So this main street here is right here behind this breaker, behind these rocks. This is the fanciest building in town, and this is a couple of my friends and I up on the beach. So Nome's a pretty desolate existence. So we've talked a little bit about subsistence feeding, right? So why do Alaska Natives have to have all this food? Why do they gotta go hunt? Anybody like Doritos? Yeah, Doritos. Why not just go to the grocery store for this stuff? Because Doritos are $7.50 a bag, okay? $7.50 a bag. Anybody like the internet? Yeah, love the internet. Internet, this is a screenshot from my phone. You gotta pay by the megabyte, okay? So expensive, it's $8.50 for gas up there, okay? If you want a car, you have to ferry it on a ship from Seattle. Okay, for like $5,000. There's two ferries that come a year. If you don't get your car on the ferry, you don't have a car. Okay, it's really hard. The environment for them is extremely important. Okay. So here's us. This was my little trip on my boat. Okay, I didn't see any sea ice. So not only does Nome not have sea ice, but I went all the way up here, okay, and didn't see any sea ice. Nothing, none. And the reason part of that is these rising temperatures. This is an increase in temperature. This is this summer's data. We were seeing differences as much as 10 degrees Celsius. Okay, so sea ice is melting because, well, partially because of this rise in sea temperatures as well. And this isn't just happening in Nome. This is also happening in places like Shishmaref, which is really close to Nome. And this village has to move because of climate change. Their village is falling into the ocean. Okay, basically because they're seeing sea level rise and all of that's causing erosion. They lose 2 to 5 feet per year of their land. And they're seeing this. They have to move. And again, this is a community. These are people. This is their home. This would be like us having to leave Dover tomorrow because, you know, we're being flooded out and we have our schools crashing into the ground, right? These kids are like you, okay? These people are like you. This is the United States and they're having these problems, okay? And this isn't just happening here, there are other villages that are having this issue as well, okay? And I'm gonna kind of talk a little bit about why do I care? Why do I care about these people? Why do I care about Alaska? And it doesn't really have much to do with Polar Trek, honestly. It's because I used to live there. Kind of going on with Miss Karen's ideas the other day. Our decisions and what we love and our passions come from our experiences. And this experience, when I used to live there, is what really gives me the passion for this stuff, okay? This is affecting my friends. This is pictures. I worked in education. I did outdoor education with students. It's hurting my former students. They're seeing these effects of climate change. They're seeing these changes. And it's really scary, and it's sad, and it's terrifying, and I feel bad for them, and I hear their stories all the time. My friends are calling me like, oh, this is happening, blah, blah. This isn't the same anymore. And it's just really upsetting. Okay, so it's affecting my friends, and that's where this is coming from me personally. So I know I have my like no plastics in my classroom sign on my door, and people bring in single-use plastics, and I get like furious. And that's the reason why, okay? Because I have friends that this is directly affecting, okay? And it will affect you eventually. So this is great. And then this was fun for me because I hadn't looked through these pictures in a really long time. And I saw this quote, never run short in the land of plenty. This is a picture of me in Haines, Alaska, and there's a bench there. And honestly, we think of Alaska having all these resources, but if we don't take care of them and we don't think about climate change and we don't think about what we're gonna do, we're gonna lose those resources, which is really gonna be a problem. And the reason that I'm talking to you today is because you guys are STA students. So even if you're not a science person, I know everyone in this room cares about people. And science is about people, and climate change is about people. Okay? It's affecting people. And we need to think about ways that we can really help them. So I'm asking you to help me. I'm asking you to help me, okay? We need to change this. This is our generation, this is your generation, your kids' generation are gonna be affected by this. And I'm asking you, I'm begging you to help me, okay? And there are some things that you can do that you've probably already heard of, like single-use plastics, don't use them, turn off your lights. Don't waste, food, meatless Mondays, protests. There's a lot of high school protests happening, okay? A lot of high school students are standing up for what they believe in now, which is really great. Carpool, okay, carpool to work, all these different things. Join Environmental Club, okay? Do something about this. I'm asking you, I'm begging you, please, 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 okay? And I just want to thank you guys today for listening. I know that climate change is a really hard topic to talk about. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, and it can be very difficult, but I really appreciate you listening to me. And again, I implore you, I'm begging you, please help me in this challenge. And if anybody wants to talk any more about science or climate change or whatever, please see me. I would love to talk to you about it. Thank you very much.